We know that you have interviewed with us before and received our endorsement.
Yes, she was running for assembly that time.
For assembly, and now you're running for Senate.
Right.
We think we know the answer to this question, but we're going to ask it anyway.
You ready?
What has caused you to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Well, knowing that I have served 3 terms in the Assembly and knowing that this was an open seat, this is actually in some ways the exact same seat that I ran for when I first started running. It was a seat vacated by Valerie Weber and previously Barbara Sagaski that had Valerie left to go to run for the commission at that point. And so I worked hard, and with some of the endorsements I moved forward and have worked for 3 terms. So when this seat came open and was an open seat, and I knew that it had a Democratic advantage. A lot of people think it's, truly a Republican seat because Barbara has held it. And Barbara has held it before redistricting and before term limits. So at this point, thinking long and hard, I thought, this is a really good opportunity. This is a seat I believe I can win. I know how to run elections. I have a great election team. I know how to work hard. And I thought this was a great time for me to do this and move into the Senate so that I can continue serving more of my community members. Not, my assembly seat is 1/2 of that, so now I'll be able to serve more community members.
From the time that you've spent up at Carson, obviously you've seen the inner workings firsthand, whether you like it or not.
Right.
Assuming you're elected to this Senate seat, what changes do you want to make regarding the dynamics of how the state legislature as a whole tends to function?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is the presence of women, of course, voices that are different, whether they're ethnicity differences or gender differences, they always help. And on the Senate side, of course, that would be a benefit. As a mother of 3 daughters, I always think about that. I also think it's important that I bring some experience from the Assembly over to the Senate side. So now I have those experiences that I can bring forward. I certainly think that we have some really important issues facing us in 2015. And while sometimes if somebody's been there too long, it could be a detriment. I haven't had too long. I've had just enough experience. I always say that the first time you do something, you're kind of, no matter what job, you're finding your voice. And by the time you've done it a couple, 3 times, you have a strong voice. You have your constituents that you work with and your issues. And so that just makes you a stronger piece of the puzzle to fit together.
Many of our questions during the previous weekend when we were doing our initial set of interviews were centered around education. And obviously Nevada, depending on the metric you use, is somewhere hovering around 49th and a half, worst in the nation. What ideas do you have, more short-term as opposed to long-term, to try and improve the education that our children here in Nevada are receiving?
Well, I certainly have fought in the past for education, as you probably remember, and some of you may, if you don't know, I was a teacher for 30 years, and I've continued to work in the education field in various ways. I certainly think that we need effective educators, and to do that, we need to support them by giving them good, strong professional development. And I think that's one of the things that we can do right now. That's a short-term, good fix that we can do. The other thing that I continue to fight for is full-day kindergarten and smaller class sizes. Those are also things that we can pretty quickly turn around. Last session, I was one of the primary sponsors of SB 504, which was the Zoom school piece that we initially found the $50 million and funded those schools to have pre-Ks, full-day kindergartens, and reading centers, and then summer sessions to give those kids a continuum. So I'd like to see that expanded, and I'd like to see it expanded for those kids that have the greatest need. So not so much an ethnicity issue as greatest need, because as we know, we have kids that are Latino, Black, Asian, white. I mean, we have lots of kids that for whatever reason may be failing or in a not so rich environment. And so we need to help those kids. I think it's important to recognize the cultural differences, but I do think that if we assess kids and then take them from where they are and build on that, it'll be really a strong piece for them, because research has absolutely proven that if those kids get a good start at the beginning, they will be less likely to have trouble or drop out.
In addition, I'm sorry to keep bogarting. Feel free to somebody jump in and cut me off, or else I'm going to talk all night.
Oh, no.
No, I will.
Okay, let me do it.
All right.
On the reduction of class sizes and the full-day kindergarten, where do you anticipate the funds to come from?
Well, that's always a good question, is the funding. And I spent all day, a good part of the day yesterday and today at the state building, because while I don't sit on those committees, we're working on the K-12 funding formula and what it might look like. Ultimately, those will be suggestions and work done in the interim that gets put forward to the legislature. But, you know, we certainly hope that, you know, we can find some funds within the general budget. Last time, we asked for a lot more than we got, but something was better than nothing, and that's why we had the $50 million. And we worked hand in hand, bipartisan, with the governor to find that money. You know, money comes in lots of different forms. Sometimes it can be efficiencies. Sometimes it can be taxes, if you will, or assessments, or sometimes it's not even taxes. It's a sunsetting or of another tax, or you don't sunset, you know, whatever it may be. So right now, those discussions are being held. I can't tell you exactly where that money will come from, but we certainly hope that we can find it to make
Have
the
you
education.
attached the private industry?
I do think there has been some discussion, you know, with all across the board, and some of that certainly will depend on what happens with the margins tax. I mean, that's up to the voters right now. That's not something we make a decision on. That is probably a pretty sensitive subject to our businesses, and I think that we need to be cognizant of that.
And the mining tax?
And the mining tax, right, I always am careful because when the economy's up, mining's down. And when the economy is down, mining's up. And so what happens is if the economy is up and we're losing money in the mining tax, we don't have a solid base, a consistent base. So I think that the best thing to do is to have something that doesn't tax one entity and comes across the board, where we all pay our fair share, whatever system, whatever group we pull together to make those decisions. I certainly think that most of our businesses, most of our resources have agreed that everyone wants to fund education, but they all just want to pay their fair share. They don't want one group tax heavier than another. But I can't speak for those groups.
Well, we know for a fact that our state is what they call a retirement hub. So eventually we'll have more. Right now we have 2.7 million, of which 12% roughly translate to between 325,000 elderly, which most of them really don't have any money and requires a lot of care because they could not take care of themselves. In coming years, that will increase to 30%. And that is going to be based not on the 2.7 million, but the actual census at present time. So we're looking at between 750 to 1 million. And again, those elderly they don't have any money. And they also need certain form of care. So do we have anything, a program, or can you suggest anything what we can do to help those elderly? as far as their financial need. When they're at that point that they needed more care, their families could not take care of themselves and they need to be somewhere else to be provided with such care.
Well, I think we have some senior state pieces in place now, and I recognize that we do have more elderly. For me, that's why I always go back to the education is so important, because as I get older, as Mike gets older, Mike and I,
Mike will never get old.
Mike and I are the parents here.
Grandparents.
We will need doctors. We will need policemen to have a safe society. We will need firemen. We will need all the things that we need now. And so I think that we need to keep that in mind. And that's one of the reasons I always say education is so important, because with educated society, you have a safer society. So now you have those children that grow up to help us be the doctor, help be the doctors, help be the policemen, help be the firemen. I certainly think part of the infrastructure that helps the elderly is always local. And while we have some state, like I said, ombudsmen, we have the state Department of Aging and Health. We have a commission that met yesterday on people with disabilities and aging. And they're working on all those diligently, and I think that we're looking ahead. I think that I didn't sit in on that meeting because it was at the same time as the education, so I don't have the knowledge of what they did yesterday yet, but I certainly think that giving the elderly the ability to access, like I said, health care, transportation, your RTC system, whether it's they need help getting to doctors. So we do have some doctors that are, I think, creating some systems. I know I heard of a doctor the other day that has a Friday afternoon that he'll work with patients that don't have insurance. So we have some giving back to our community. So, but I think that they're working on some pretty viable solutions. Like I said, I did not attend that meeting yesterday. It was a mix for me, but I'd be happy to find out what they did, talk about that, and get back to you with some of those suggestions that they came up with yesterday.
As far as your open door policy, if people like us would call you and inform as far as the actual situation of that particular industry or particular age group, so to speak, would you be able to accommodate?
Absolutely. I have constituents that call me all the time. I have an email address and a cell phone that I use, and I'm helping a gentleman right now who called, and he was having trouble getting his bills paid through, Medicare, and so we had that conversation with him, and I got a hold of somebody that could call and help him. We don't have staff when we're in the interim, but we do have people at the State Department that we can call if we need help. So I can call the Legislative Council Bureau and say, I have John Smith here, and he's having trouble with, welfare, or I have a mother who needs help getting formula for her baby, whatever it is, on both ends of the spectrum. And we absolutely try our best to help people all the time. I had a woman call me recently that was taking care of a man on the other side of town, but she called me, so I don't know if she thought I was her person, or because I didn't know her, I don't know if she thought I was her representative, or whether she lived here and he lived there. But what I did was I called, once again, I called the Legislative Council Bureau, and I said, would you please call this lady? She's having trouble with a gentleman she's taking care of. I gave them the information, and then they could call her and get the information of where we needed to push that through, and then we talked and decided how we could help her best. So it's very easy to help people, and do quite a bit. It encompasses quite a bit of time. for all of us, but we're all happy to do it. We're all happy to do it.
Thank you.
Okay. Firstly, I want to thank you for helping me with the bill last year.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
That was an important bill, Mike.
Yeah, it was good
And
for
don't
her.
sell yourself short, because you were very instrumental in making sure that we had the
I,
accurate
like
information.
in the Senate, Justin Jones got it for me. 22, nothing. The other thing, UNLV, they said they're going to open a medical school or something. That's what the paper you said.
Yes, they're
They're
working
working on
on moving a medical school down here, and they've hired some people, and I think it's good. It's good. You know, originally that's sort of what happened with, you know, we have a medical school at UNR, and they needed, you know, some residency spots, some places for people to go, and that's kind of how we ended up with UFC having part of that piece. And that's always, I'm sure you talk to doctors and you know that that's one of the important pieces, is having those people do their residency,
But there's
because
not enough.
they tend to stay.
Dr. Dale Carriage is a good friend of mine. He said, Mike, there's only maybe 15, 20 slots, and there may be a couple hundred
Yeah.
people waiting for
He's right.
the residency.
He's right.
Yeah. The other thing is, you know, like my wife, we own a group home for elder care, and they have some issue right now, you know, with the fire marshal trying to basically use his powers and eliminate all the group homes in the short run, so the big corporations can come and they have 100 patients or 500 patients, and we have small, like 6 Alzheimer's patients, six. So he's you're the vice
The
president,
Vice President.
and they are having a problem with the fire marshal. So you know, he's going to be in touch with you, and maybe you can help him out, see how we can talk to the fire marshal. If not, then we don't try to get a
Right.
bill passed to the Assembly and Senate, you know.
Yes,
That
what's
would
going
be-
to happen if that happens, what the fire marshal would push through.
Just still in a small, you know,
Yeah,
quick, yes.
I represent over 350 residential group homes, of which we represent over 3,500 of our most
All down
vulnerable
basically.
citizens of the state, and we offer an alternative housing, low-cost housing versus you know, the bigger facilities, and most of us are private-based. So whatever our residents could afford, that's what they pay. But when you go to a more bigger type facility, that is being subsidized by our state. So our state pays between $250 to $500 versus for the residential group homes, they only pay as low as $60 per day. Another thing too is that it's not only the group homes going to be affected, but also the entities that deal with us. We have hospices coming in, home health coming in, medical suppliers coming in. We have other entities that we directly deal with. So if the elimination of our industry is going to have a ripple effect, but the most affected would be the elderly because of, as I mentioned earlier,
Basically, just tell her short exactly what the problem is,
well, the
and
problem.
then you can meet, you know, with her, you
Yeah.
know, and we discuss it.
That's why I asked for your open door policy.
Right.
Maybe
She's got an open door policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to, what would be helpful for me is if you would like to email me. And the
Yeah.
reason I say email is because, you know, if you have it down, then when I call, I haven't transcribed what, I'm not giving my verbiage, I'm saying
Yes.
this is what's going on. Now, some of this may be a local problem, and some of it could be a state problem, some of it could be a federal problem, you know.
This is
if there's
a
money-
state, this is a state problem.
Right.
There's a fire marshal
State
from the
problem,
state.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you will email me and send me that information, I will be happy to see what is going on and see if we can come up with a resolution that will work. It may be that you're absolutely right, it may be that we need to compromise and have a resolution. I mean, that's how, you know, how it all works, so, but if you'll send me that information, I'll absolutely look into it.
Most come to us
And
and
are
get our
those-
bill passed.
And are those, are most of those homes here in this area, or are they everywhere?
Oh, they're
And mostly in the,
Yeah.
but mostly in the
Las
west side.
Vegas area.
But mostly in the west side of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
It's area.
Right,
We got 325.
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Your email?
Yes, that's it.
Email.
That's a good email.
And is this your cell phone as well, or your?
That is, it's right here in my purse.
Thank you.
Sometimes, he knows how to text, this one. So, sometimes, you know, you don't always answer it the first time. Sometimes you have to leave a message and I have to get back to you. But, like I've got about 4 on there from today.
well, we're right at our time amount right now.